Eric Householder, longtime friend and guest of the program, who now is in the much sought-after inner circle at the state level. Good morning, E. How are you?
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Jonathan and Bill. How are you guys doing?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Eric. Good to talk to you.
You know, I have a confession. I have not had my daily listening to WRNR like I used to since January, so I have not got a chance to really sit down and listen to the show every morning. I used to religiously do that every day, but haven't had time.
I was noticing the ratings drop in the last book. It said we had one fewer listener, and I was wondering who that was. Now I know.
That was me. Sorry.
But also the other way, Rob, Eric's not nearly as equipped to handle the face of the world's problems now than what he was before.
Well, he doesn't have to.
And I'm loving it, too.
Yeah. Eric, your official title is Cabinet Secretary, West Virginia Department of Administration. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right.
Yes.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, it means that I have the responsibility of managing over 811 employees, 15 agencies. And the Department of Administration, if you remember my last time back in January when I was on, Department of Administration handles a wide swath of different types of agencies, from purchasing to personnel to PEIA to BRIM to general services, public defenders, prosecuting attorneys. It's more like a customer service type agency, and we have a lot of, I tell people it's really a professional agency. We have a lot of professional people that work under this administration, and it's been great. I really enjoy my job. I really enjoy the people, and they're doing great work.
Do you get a chance to get hands-on with that stuff and kind of dig beneath the surface
absolutely.
and learn it inside out?
No, absolutely. And I made an effort to try to meet every employee that I could. And so I went out, with these agencies, sat down, met employees, talked to them to see, basically, hey, what's going on? And I'm still learning. There's a lot of the nuances. I will say there's a big difference from being a legislator to being a cabinet secretary. And the biggest difference is the inner workings behind the scenes versus, you're down there, you're creating law, you're putting forth what you think would best serve West Virginia. And then this side is the nuts and bolts, trying to pick those pieces up, trying to make everything work. And it's been so far it's been fun. It's more catered to what I like to do than being a legislator. Actually, I haven't missed being a legislator, if you really want to know.
Let me ask a question, Eric.
Yeah.
Being on the other side now, on the administrative side, overseeing all of these agencies, are there things that you say, wow, I wish we had done X or Y when I was in the legislature, because it would have made this department run a heck of a lot better?
No, absolutely. There are things, and my biggest pet peeve, and I think it's a pet peeve of a lot of people, is the reaction times with government. And still we have slow reaction times. So I'm always harping, hey, look, we've got to be able to make key decisions. We've got to be able to make them quicker. And, if you can come up with a solution, let's go forth. If you can show me that this idea is going to work, let's make the decision and go forward. But that's one of the challenges that I've seen since being on this side, is sometimes the lack of making key decisions quickly enough.
Eric, one of those agencies you might put in that category would be PEIA, and that's
Yes.
the agency that we as laymen know most or hear most about. Two questions. One, is there a solution to the PEIA problem? And I'm sure there is. I'd like to hear your views on it. And are there other agencies under your domain that present comparable problems that we are not familiar with?
What was the second part of your question?
Are there other
Okay.
Are there other agencies that provide comparable problems as does PEIA that we're just not familiar with?
Well, let's start with the second part of your question, because each agencies, they all have certain problems that's inherent with government. It could be, for instance, purchasing. There's X amount of contracts that are coming in. There's deadlines. There's statewide contracts. It could be Office of Technology. In fact, one of the issues that when I first arrived on the job, there was a lot of issues at Office of Technology. I think we've got those basically corrected. A lot of the issues were like a breach of contract. They were bringing me contracts that had expired the day that they expired, stuff like that. And I basically did a whole reorg of Office of Technology. If you looked at their org chart that they had 17 sheets of their org chart. And if you looked at them, they were all on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, and they looked really nice and coherent. But when you actually took them out of the book and put them on a wall and saw how the flow of information, you had one person, basically 99% of the people were answering to one person. The CIO who's in charge was only answering to 2 or 3 people. And you just can't get information up to the proper channels where it needs to be. So we had a breach of contract of $1.6 million that we had to correct. We had a federal clawback of some dollars. They brought me a contract, like I just mentioned, that had expired and needed to be renewed. So their finance division hadn't been billing people for like 8 months. So basically, I reorged the whole agency. I pulled their finance away from them and stuck them under our finance department here, under administration. So those are some of the problems that we went ahead and tackled early on, along with the other things that the governor has us working on, which are the executive orders. But to get back to your first question about PEIA, yes, right now we're working in work groups. The governor, you've heard, had mentioned that he'd like to have a special session in July. So we're working, every day on the solution, and we're providing a lot of data right now to the governor's office. And in fact, I had a meeting with Governor Morsi yesterday, and he'd like to see some other data. So, and I really can't divulge what we're actually working on, but I will say we've got 8 of us, along with PEIA and their actuaries, working on some type of a solution moving forward. And but credit to Governor Morsi, because he does realize we're not on a sustainable path. The taxpayers is paying a lot of money for PEIA, and he wants to find a solution. And I think we will find a solution.
John, you've talked about some solutions previously.
Eric, there's a huge solution to helping PEIA that could happen very easily. Medicare beneficiaries would be better off on the open market than the state spending what it does on people over 65 for PEI and Medicare. I own a large Medicare insurance agency, and I look at these PEIA plans, and they are sometimes a little bit better than what somebody can get on the open market as far as Medicare Advantage goes, but they are also tremendously more expensive. And if you look at the cost versus benefit, the state is spending a lot of money. The beneficiaries are spending more money than they would just on the open market. I think the state, right, I mean, and I'm trying to get set up where I can come speak to the committee. I would love to talk to somebody about how Medicare works, and how it would work to the benefit of not only the retirees, but the benefit of our state fiscally. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, Eric, go right ahead.
No, Jonathan, you're exactly right. And I can't divulge too much, but I will say that our legal team is working on some of those suggestions that you just mentioned, okay? And you're right. We've also heard people say, hey, let's privatize. We've also heard people say, hey, let's do this. So we're testing out all these scenarios so the governor can make a key decision when it's time in July with buy-in from the legislature, because, it's going to take all sides working together on this. But if you have any time to come to Charleston, Jonathan, I definitely will get you at one of our work groups and give you an opportunity to come in and talk to us and just give us whatever experience you have about the Medicare side.
I would love that, because I can tell you Medicare is something the federal government does well, and there's really not a need for the state to be contracted with somebody where it's costing the state money. I mean, I'm
Right.
a fiscal conservative. I believe we need to take care of our state retirees. I believe that they put in their time, and we have a contract with them.
Right.
Saying
right.
we're going to make sure you're taken care of. But if the federal Medicare program can take care of them as well, in some cases better, then it's kind of a no-brainer if it saves the state money and it also saves our seniors, our retirees from the state, teachers and otherwise, and saves them money also.
Well, and keep in mind, with the passage of Senate Bill 268, this July 1, now you will see the first inaction or the action of that bill, because you're hearing about premium increases of about 14%, 12% to our retirees, 14 to 15% to our non-state employees. You're also seeing their deductibles, their co-payments are higher, and so I support what Governor Morrissey wants us to do. He is right. It's not a sustainable path, and we have to find a solution. And we're compiling so much data. Actually, I'm learning a lot more about it, which is good for my behalf, because when we met with the governor, just picture a boardroom. You have the CEO sitting at the front of the table, and you have people sitting around the table, and he goes around the table and, comment about this, comment about that. And to Patrick's credit, yesterday he came up with an idea, and he wanted us to challenge his idea. So Governor Morrissey's willing to listen, and that's why I admire about him the most. It's not just his way or the highway. He wants to be challenged. He wants us to come up with the best solution and give him as much ideas and the data so he can make the best decisions. But it was really fun yesterday for about 2 hours sitting in what I would call the boardroom, because the governor, truthfully, is the CEO of the state.
Eric Householder, our guest, Cabinet Secretary of the West Virginia Department of Administration. You mentioned BRIM as part of what you oversee, Eric. What is the fiscal situation and soundness of BRIM at this time?
BRIM's improving, but keep in mind, with the amount of claims that have happened over the last year and a half, it's impacting their financial ability. Keep in mind, the legislature, I believe, had an opportunity. The House had the votes, but I don't believe the Senate had enough votes. We need to change the statute of limitations back to, right now it's 18 plus 18, which means that basically up until 36 years of age on some of these suits, people would have the right to go back and sue the state. You have instances like this Miracle Meadows where some of these kids were sexually abused, and it pulls at your heartstrings, but every one of these cases are settling for over $1 million. And I think the payout so far has been about $240 million. And then right behind that, we have the state police fiasco where there was cameras hidden in the women's locker room. And, that'll be probably starting this summer or maybe even late fall. But
you mean the settlements
it does,
for that?
The settlements, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, but all that impacts BRIM, and because remember, BRIM is just providing insurances to state and local governments. They're not the cheapest. In fact, I dealt with an issue last night. The town of Hedgesville, their insurance costs have increased exponentially, and so I put our acting director, Melanie Duke, on the phone with Mr. Good, who's the treasurer of town council, to look into the situation this morning and maybe try to help find out what's going on. But
no indication as to why those premiums are going up so quickly?
Well, as you start to lose people in your pool, because you can also get insurance sometimes cheaper in the private market than what you can with BRIM. But no, it's a lot of it is because of the claims of the Miracle Meadows and now the state police. And, we're underwriting new policies and we're putting different standards in it that we're hoping that will protect BRIM going into the future. But the legislature made a change back in 2020, which affected BRIM moving forward. This was before the Miracle Meadows case, but once the legislature made that decision to change the statute of limitations from plus 18 to 36 years, that changed the outlook for Brim moving forward, because then you had the Miracle Meadows case, and then boom, $240 million in payouts.
Eric,
Go ahead.
a few years ago, a lot of the counties were leaving Brim to go to other means of insurance. Berkeley County was one of those. Have those
Yes.
counties started coming back into the Brim network, or are they still
We-
insuring outside of the state in some cases?
Well, no, like I just mentioned, Brim is not always the cheapest source, and I encourage these, county commissions and these local municipalities to do their due diligence and to shop for the best insurance. And also, you should have an insurance provider that's going to come in and do the work. And you don't want an insurance provider to come in and say, okay, here's your premium for the next year, and then never show up, never return, and just someone who's not giving you good customer service. But no, I encourage all county commissions and municipalities to do their due diligence and to shop and to keep Brim in check. If it is cheaper in the private market, I would encourage you to purchase it.
Well, let me just say, I mean, what happens then is municipalities that are in good shape as far as claims history, stuff like that.
That's right.
Can shop stuff around. So what Brim ends up doing is Brim ends up losing the business that would be the best business for it, the most profitable business, and ends up keeping the business that is maybe a little tarnished.
You're right. And then as that pool starts to decrease, then obviously those that remain would have to pay higher premiums. And, there's decisions that need to be made with Brim. Should Brim cover non-state agencies? Should they cover nonprofits? I would say they should not cover nonprofits. And that's a discussion. That's a decision that the governor is trying to make currently. And so, like I said earlier, I give Patrick Morrisey credit. He's hands-on. He really wants to turn the state around and to head us in the right direction. And he's working hard every day. And I can't say enough of good things about him.
You were in the legislature during the Jim Justice administration, and now you're, of course, at the cabinet level with the Morrisey administration. Compare and contrast the two in terms of their leadership styles and hands-on approach or lack thereof, Eric.
No, you definitely have a more hands-on approach with Governor Morrisey. He's out. Number one, he's living at the mansion. Number two, he's walking the Capitol grounds. I see him, every day out there. He's walking the hallways. He stops in. He talks with agencies. He meets people, where the previous governor didn't do that. Would just come in for a couple minutes, sit in an office, maybe do a press conference. Patrick Morrisey's going out around the state, doing ceremonial bill signing. He's meeting people. Big difference. He's wanting to be a hands-on governor to help and push West Virginia into a new direction to make West Virginia a better place to live, work, and raise a family. Have you had him on your show lately? Has he been on?
Not since he was elected.
Okay. I'll mention something that he needs to get on there and talk with you guys.
Well,
bring you up to speed. But he's doing a lot of good stuff.
Let me ask you this question then to follow up. So Justice was obviously much more hands-off and not as big of a presence, no pun intended there, in terms of his day-to-day involvement with the legislature, which meant that the leadership in the legislature really took control along with, what was his name, Abraham?
Yes,
yeah.
Brian Abraham.
Yeah, Brian Abraham. And that's how a lot of things got done. And that was much different, and it was very evident in the beginning of the legislative session this year that there were two different styles that needed to be adjusted to. What was that adjustment period like, and did you have any role in being a conduit between the governor's office and the legislature, since you were freshly out of that experience, in terms of trying to get bills passed?
Yes. Well, and keep in mind, it was a new governor, new administration. So there was some learning curves, some bumps along the way. Yes, I did help the governor as far as I was the liaison with Darrell Coles on the House side. So any of the governor's key initiatives, we were up there talking with, House, not only House leadership, but a lot of the House members, just to see where they stood, what were some of the issues, what, if any, changes were going to be made to the legislation, stuff like that. But no, I think overall it was fairly successful, session. It's always, your first session's always the bumpiest, but he's got a great team around him. He's got Sean Whalen, who's his chief counsel. He's got Doug Buffington, a senior advisor, Curtis Capehart. He's got great people. And I suspect the next couple years, you're going to see great things coming out of this administration.
You expect the next legislative session, then everybody kind of knows how it works and it would flow more smoothly? Obviously, you've got 134
absolutely.
personalities there.
Well, yeah, you're always going to have differences, and you've got to learn to work across the aisle. And I think Patrick did that several times. I know he met with your Senate Finance Chair, Jason Barrett. He met with other stakeholders and leaders. And no, I mean, he's willing to reach across the aisle, try to find some common ground, and get the best piece of legislation that we can get that's going to benefit the West Virginia taxpayer.
When he was AG, we had Patrick on pretty much monthly throughout his 12 years as AG, and I know he's a big planner. So is there a blueprint laid out as to what years 2, 3, and 4 of a Morrissey administration would look like and what the big achievement goals are for those years?
Oh, I'm sure there are. I haven't seen that plan because he's keeping us busy at the cabinet level. We're still working through all the executive orders. We're now doing summaries, and we're also, justifying everything that we've had in these executive orders that we had to report. So we're keeping busy. And then plus on top of that, we're trying to find solutions for PEIA and so forth and collecting all that data. So the governor's keeping us quite busy at the cabinet level. In fact, we have a cabinet meeting tomorrow. It's tomorrow afternoon, I believe, and one of the things that's required of us when he goes around the room is to ask each agency or each cabinet secretary to talk about each one of their agencies and what issues we're having. So we're constantly keeping the governor abreast of what problems we're having, what things are, what we're working on, stuff like that. So he knows. He knows everything that we're working on and what we're doing.
Yeah, Eric,
sense.
As we sum up, Mike Hornby suggested we ask you about your wall of jobs.
You got 30 seconds to answer that one.
The wall of jobs?
Yes.
That was the org chart. I believe, so that was what I spoke about earlier when I took the org chart of the 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. We actually posted it on the wall there. And you could see how bad this org chart really was, the original org chart. And I believe I brought Mike in to see it. And we've got pictures of it. I showed the governor, brought him down, showed him. And from that's why we went ahead and reorged the Office of Technology. And things are improving. We also did a survey. Morale was bad. So we made some changes within their structure, and things seem to be improving.
Thank you, Eric. Great to talk with you again, sir.
We'll see you guys.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.